waiting for people to whoosh back in the room. It's like Harry Potter, isn't it? It's like flu powder. Whew, there we are. As soon as we see the numbers all jump back in, we'll get started. Okay, I think we're all back now. Wonderful. Before I continue, I am putting into the chat the link to the resource um, that I mentioned, The Green Good News by Wilson Dickinson. And I will also let you know that I am going to send a PDF of the PowerPoint that I presented. So you'll have that along with the worksheet that I mentioned, uh, how to map your neighbors in creation. So let's take another poll. Now that you have had a chance to think about those options, we're going to look at this poll again, but this time we're going to ask you to pick the option that you think is most likely to gain traction in your congregation. So the first time we asked, what are you excited about? Now we want to know, what do you think your congregation could be excited about? So is our poll wizard ready to go with the first question? Look at that. The poll wizard has had success. So what do you think your congregation could get excited about? An energy audit and carbon tracking, or a creation tithe for carbon reduction? About half have voted. About 3/4 have voted. Last call for votes. Okay. Now let's put up the question number 2. In preparing and protecting communities, do you think disaster preparedness is one that could get traction in your congregation, or the creation tithe for water use reduction? About half have voted. This one's going fast. 3/4 of the way there. %. Last call for votes. Okay, and now we're ready for number 3. With Accelerate Innovation, are you more excited about, or do you think your congregation will get more excited about installing clean energy tech, or concentrating on the creation tithe for tech and innovation? We're almost 3/4 of the way there. You all have really mastered the voting here. I'm so impressed. Wonderful, wonderful. We're about 80% of the way there. Last call. Okay. Now, poll wizard, is it possible for you to show us the results of these polls? And so if it all goes well, our goal is to show what individuals here were excited about for themselves and compare that to what they think their congregations are excited about. We want to see if your dialogue had any influence on that. So, okay, so now what I don't know is this the one? Is this the first poll or is this the second poll? Can our poll wizard unmute and tell us what we're looking at here?
This is the first poll that we took before the breakout session.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so this is what you all are excited about. So with option 1, the winner is the energy audit and carbon tracking, which I know Reverend Pam is going to be very excited about because she's going to teach you how to do this in your congregation. So that is great. But 37% are also interested in thinking about how to do the creation tithe for carbon reduction. That's wonderful. Okay, great. Let's see option number 2. All right. So for this one, oh my gosh, almost exactly the same numbers. So the energy audit, no, I'm sorry, this is the same one as we had. Wait. So was that the?
These are all of the pre-breakout polling results.
Got it. Okay, all right. So now we're looking at option 2. So for this one, disaster preparedness got 37%, and water use reduction. So this is what you all are most excited about, is the water use reduction. Very interesting. Okay, but still 37% think that it's also important to do the disaster preparedness. All right, let's look at number 3. Here we have 69% are very excited about looking at doing clean energy tech for their congregations. And about a third of you are excited about the creation tithe for tech and innovation. Okay. So interestingly, the installing the clean energy tech out of all 6 got the highest for excitement among all of you. All right. That's great. So now let's look at what you think your congregations would be excited about. Okay, so is this?
These are the ones we just took.
Okay, good. All right. So very similar, but but energy audit and carbon tracking went up a little bit. So we had 63% of you were very excited about that. You think your congregations, 67% of you think your congregations would be really on board for the energy audit and carbon tracking. Reverend Pam is like, yes, all right, we're on the right track there. Okay, good. So let's see option 2. Which one? Got it here. Okay, so the energy, so we're looking at, here we go. So disaster preparedness got 42%, so higher than you all personally thinking, but water reduction definitely came out on top here. So that is something that I think we can see there's some energy behind this when it comes to option 2 of preparing and protecting communities. Okay, and let's look at the last one. Okay, clean energy tech got this. So this is really high. 76% of you think that your congregations would get excited about installing clean energy tech, and 24% would be interested in the creation tithe. So this is very interesting. I think what we're seeing here is that um, you can, let's see, we'll do the stop share. We've got all those results. That's wonderful. So what we can see here is that, first of all, congregations are definitely um, willing to do this work of climate ambition. And what I want to share with you now are some ways, some resources that can help you jumpstart your eco ministries or your creation care ministries or your green tasks force. They have lots of different names. I want to share with you some things that are local to you right there in Arizona, and also some nationwide organizations that can give you ideas for sermons, for Bible studies, talking points, and connecting for action in your communities to protect and lift up God's creation. So one of them is called Blessed Tomorrow. Blessed Tomorrow is a national organization that is under the umbrella of Eco America. Remember, I mentioned them a little bit earlier. Eco America has different groups that are concentrating on how to address climate issues, both in the areas of health and wellness and communities and among faith communities, people of faith. And if you go on the Blessed Tomorrow website, and I'll put the link into the chat, and I will also send a list of links that you'll get in your packets that you can go on there. You'll find all kinds of resources. They do up to the minute research about how people of faith are thinking about environmental issues. They have a guide called Moving Forward, a guide to climate action for your congregation and community. And it walks you through the steps so you can do this in your congregation. So all of these things, you don't have to invent the wheel here. It's already been done, and they give you well-researched and very user-friendly tips and steps to be able to do this in your congregation. They also have um, a guide for faith leaders. They have webinars. They have ways to look at climate change, not just about environmental issues, but that climate change is really also about mental health issues. So when people are recovering from climate fueled natural disasters, such as hurricanes, such as the wildfires, such as the sea levels rising and wiping out entire communities. This has incredible impacts on both physical and mental health. And so this guide is very helpful for congregations to be able to provide support when those things are happening. And then there's a guide for and a webinar on how to effectively communicate about climate. We're finding that more and more people in a bipartisan way are willing to have the conversation because people are seeing the impacts that are happening all over their communities. They're happening all over the world, and people are starting to get galvanized. They're seeing Greta Thunberg and the youth rising up for climate action. They're seeing organizations around the world that are saying we need to do something about climate action. And so this is very inspirational for a lot of people, but we also know that there are some who are still on the fence. They're not sure about the climate science, or they actually don't believe that it's true. And so it's very important that people of faith be able to communicate in a way that builds bridges rather than furthering those divides. Another organization that I really highly recommend that you look into is called Interfaith Power and Light. Now, this is not just a Christian organization, neither is Blessed Tomorrow. This is an interfaith organization. and they have chapters in different states, and there's one in Arizona. And so they have all kinds of resources for you to talk about climate change and to connect with other congregations, because we can do so much more together than we can ever do alone. So you as a diocese are now working on all of this. And then if you can also be connecting in your communities with other houses of worship, then that builds the coalition even more. There's also a connection between Arizona Faith Network and Creation Justice Ministries that's looking at how to address the issue of extraction in Arizona. So how to address the uranium mining that is being proposed for the Grand Canyon, how to protect this natural wonder, um, and how to think about this from the perspective of our faith, that this is part of our calling, this is our vocation, this is part of our baptismal, our dedication as baptized Christians, that we are protecting the very earth that is our sanctuary that God has created. So before I take some questions, because we'll have just a couple minutes, I want to just stress again that when we talk about environmental issues, it's very important that we are proclaiming the good news. Any social issue must be framed within a biblical and theological framework, and that includes creation care. Because there is so much bad news going on in the world right now regarding climate and environmental issues, it can cause feelings of depression and what I call the dark night of the green soul, realizing how much we have lost, how many species have disappeared that we haven't even discovered yet, that we are in the sixth great extinction that is caused by human beings. We know how much we've lost. We know how much our actions have changed the planet. And so some people start to feel so overwhelmed by this that they want to give up. But that's why, as people of faith, we can draw on our resources within Scripture to say the people of God have always had to deal with existential crises. This is the worst that humanity has ever had to deal with. But that's why we need to share stories of where people are acting to protect God's creation. We need to show that people of goodwill are rising up, are joining together, are cleaning up local waterways, are meeting with their legislators, are joining together across the divides of religion and race, and thinking about these justice issues in a way that builds up the community. So we want to show how we can participate in God's redemption of earth. We have to emphasize that God is at work in the midst of this, that God is not pulling back and saying, you're on your own, but God is working in us and through us to redeem that which has fallen. This doesn't mean that we're just, going to give false hope. Well, it's all going to be fine. You know, Big Daddy in the sky is going to clean it all up for us when Jesus comes back. God's going to create a new heaven and a new earth. That's not how we should be interpreting these texts. We need to be interpreting them as to say, God has created this in a way that we have been entrusted as stewards, as caretakers. And so when God emptied God's self in order to create this universe and this planet, emptied God's self in order to become a human being, the very stuff of earth, that is an act of love. And that is a sign of the grace and hope and mercy that we find in ourselves and in our churches as well. So, what I say is we have to preach God's eco resurrection. When Mary and the women went to the tomb on Easter morning, they went expecting death. And instead, they were surprised by joy. And Jesus arose with scars. And we know that our earth is going to bear scars from what has happened. But we go to those crucified places, trusting that we will meet Jesus there. We go to those crucified communities, knowing that we will meet Jesus there and that we can be participants in this new creation, enacting God's grace for all creation. So I'll stop there and see what questions you have and what came up for you in your groups, any aha moments that you really want to share in the time that we have left.
If we have questions, please raise your hand and we will. So Troy Mendez, unmute yourself.
There we go. It said the host was not allowing me to unmute myself. Yes, we had a great discussion about when we got into our shared values. We were talking about how, just as Jesus tells us, I come that you have life and have it more abundantly, that so much of our theology around creation care is about bringing and inviting God's life force, God's presence into everything, and that we can be God's agents of healing. And so we had a lot of shared values over healing, over protecting the life of communities, protecting the life of the environment, and also of species and of many different even microclimates. Arizona is interesting because we have such diversity. Like when some people are talking very much about water issues, there were other people in our group talking about fire protection issues, about the real threat of fire. And so we have great diversity, but our main principle that we came back over and over to was that this can be firmly rooted in a theology of healing, and how Jesus brought healing into the world, and that we can partner with Christ in doing this for our communities and our world.
That's beautiful, Troy. One of the things that I've done in my research is to test trigger words with congregations around what they find to be too political to hear in a sermon and what they find to be okay. And in a this Wabash grant that I'm directing, we had 10 congregations and we sent the survey out to these like 400 participants. And we gave them a list of words, and we found that, so we put the word climate change on the list, and we put the term God's creation. Climate change came in as a hot trigger word, like that's too political. But the term God's creation was the coolest. It was the lowest reactivity on the list. So, Troy, when you're talking about using the biblical language and these stories and these values, that is so important, because we do not want to sound like we are playing into the politicizing game on this issue that is about the 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 health and healing and wholeness of God's people. So you're right on track. I'm so glad to hear that your group talked about those values. And as pastors, that's the kind of thing that we want to lift up in our sermons, so that people understand that it's not a partisan issue. This is a faith issue. So thanks so much for that, Troy.
Thank you. Can we give Landon Swanson permission to unmute?
my question is just really quick. Any chance that you, from the poll results, have you given those polls to other folks? Do you have like national results or any larger data on those?
That's great, Landon. You all are the guinea pigs. This is the first time that we've done something this large with this group, and but I do these kinds of keynotes all the time, and so one of the things that I've come to realize, especially as things are getting worse, is that we do need metrics. We need data. We need to set goals. We need to establish a baseline of where people are, so and establish some goals so that then we can hold ourselves accountable and also celebrate when we've met those goals. So Landon, this is sort of a test run of this, but it absolutely, this can be done in other denominations or synods or dioceses, and you can be sure that I will be writing that up as we test this with other organizations. So thanks for that suggestion, Landon.
And if we can unmute John K. Tucson.
Thank you, Bishop, and thank you, Doctor, for your presentation, and particularly with the resources that you are exposing us to. I was wondering if you had any suggestions about resources that would speak to the intersection of climate change and racism.
Yes, there is a group called the Hip Hop Caucus, and I'm going to put that into the chat. Reverend Lennox Yearwood is the founder of that, and the Hip Hop Caucus looks at the intersection of race and climate. One of the things, and actually Reverend Yearwood has a chapter in Rooted in Rising where he talks about that for a long time environmental issues were considered white issues. But in fact, it's communities of color that are targeted by extracting and polluting industries. And so when people of color and communities of color look at this, it has to be about more than just protecting the wild places, the wild spaces, which is also very important, but it has to be about protecting the water and the land and the air, and not looking at a zip code and saying, we can locate our polluting industry here because these are people who have no agency and no power and no ability to fight back. So the Hip Hop Caucus is a great organization that is starting to galvanize young people and communities of color to address that intersection. Thank you so much, John, for that question.
And thank you for your response.
And I think we have maybe time for one quick question from Dev the Rev, and then we will need to take our break.
Thank you, Bishop. One of the common challenges that we encountered through all of the options and pros and cons we discussed came down to changing the American mindset from the microwave mentality of having to have immediate results to understanding you make these changes now, down the road is where in the next generation, we're going to plant the tree now so that our children can pick the fruit. And that comes down to a thing about education. And many of our schools are not teaching care of creation. They tell about creation or about the environment, but not care of it. What can we do in the grassroots level to get that word into the schools?
Climate education is critical. In fact, my 17-year-old daughter wrote an essay about it for her school to say that her suggestion is that all high schools need to require climate education in order to graduate. In her research, what she found is that young people are doing a lot of research on their own, but because they're not being equipped with how to organize and make policy changes, they're not being equipped to be able to face these challenges that are coming at them very, very quickly. So they know what the problems are. That's not the issue. They don't know what to do about it. So climate education has to be about, how do you talk to your elected representative? How do you organize? How do you talk to business leaders? How do you create coalitions? What is social movement theory? How do we use that to build these coalition movements? How do we use democracy and things like deliberative dialogue to help us think together about what are the actions that we can take so that we can have the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time? Because the window, it's still there, but it's closing rapidly. So I agree with you, uh, Dev the Rev, that the more we can help in our own confirmation programs, Sunday schools, in your own adult education, have these conversations. Help young people figure out how to have the tools that they need to address these issues.
So thank you. We are out of time for Dr. Shade's portion of the day with us, but thank you so much, Dr. Shade, for bringing your wisdom and your guidance and all of these incredible resources with you. It's been a really rich afternoon, and I am so grateful that you've been able to join us. And I'm so grateful, that they at the happy intersection of a convention that has to be held virtually and the topic of care of creation, so that we are actually, we are having the lowest carbon footprint convention ever in the history of the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona. So it's good to be thinking about these issues and realizing some of the impacts, both the positives and the negatives, that come with doing that in our own time. We are going to take a brief break, and at 3:45, we will be right back here. So between now and 3:45, you have time to go grab a snack or step away from the screen, and then we will be back at 3:45 with the Reverend Canon Pam Hyde teaching us about an Episcopal carbon tracker that we can all use in our own personal lives and also with our congregations. So thank you, and we'll take a break for 15 minutes until 3:45. Okay, welcome back. We are at our last portion of the presentation for today, which is introducing your Canon for Care of Creation, the Reverend Canon Pam Hyde, who is going to be guiding us in a training about a carbon tracker. And Pam, you can unmute yourself and take it away.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be with you this afternoon. I hope everybody is still ready to go and finish out the afternoon. I'm going to start by sharing my screen here. Here we go. So I am going to wrap up our program this afternoon by talking to you about the Sustain Island Home Carbon Tracker and our plans for using it in this diocese. I am on the wrong slide. Hang on for just a second. How did that get there? Let's start at the beginning instead of the end. Okay, there we go. Sustaining Earth, our island home. So as I begin, though, I'd like to ask that once again, we take a moment to acknowledge the traditional peoples of the land on which we stand across this diocese. We pay our respects to them for the care of the land. The truth is that we're all called to care for this land. And so that's why I've subtitled this presentation, Reducing Carbon Emissions as an Act of Love and Hope. As caretakers of this marvelous earth that God's placed in our care, we remember that Jesus tells us to go out into the world and be in action with love and hope. So let's start by looking at what's happening all around us. The climate is changing. We have more and more evidence of that all the time. Summers are starting earlier and lasting longer. Heat waves are becoming both more frequent and more intense. Droughts are becoming more prevalent and more severe, especially here in the West. But at the same time, heavy rains are becoming more common in some parts of the country. Some places are seeing record cold and snowfalls in the winter. And wow, the fires in the West, we've seen the news reports this year, they're exploding, consuming more acreage, with fire season extending just about year-round now. In general, we're seeing more weather and climate extremes. And this is the hallmark of climate imbalance. I'm going to call this climate imbalance a little more than I'm going to call it climate change, and you'll see why in a few minutes. The changing climate doesn't necessarily mean we see new phenomena. It means we see more extremes in what always occurred. The term the military uses for this is a threat multiplier, and it's a very apt description. And this evidence of a changing climate is global. We're seeing the phenomena of change from pole to pole and east to west. Hurricanes and cyclones of greater intensity in the Atlantic, the Pacific, and even in places where they were rare. So the picture of flooding in the upper right-hand corner of your screen is from Cyclone Idai, which struck Eastern Africa in March 2019, the deadliest tropical cyclone recorded in the Southwest Indian Ocean basin. It caused severe flooding in Madagascar, Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. It killed at least 1,300 people, affected more than 3 million others, caused catastrophic damage, and precipitated a humanitarian crisis. We also have melting permafrost in the Arctic and rising sea levels, which have caused a devastating loss of coastline in many northern regions. And wildfires have not only devastated the American West, but also Australia, as you may recall, and even Siberia, where an estimated 47 million acres, an area larger than the size of Greece, burned this summer. Glaciers are melting, we've all heard about that, and flooding and sea level rise are becoming more common across the globe. And we've experienced the changing climate here in Arizona too, right? It's been pretty clear this summer. Phoenix, Tucson, and Flagstaff records, among others, fell right and left. So you can see Phoenix, the hottest summer on record this year, the hottest July, the hottest August, the hottest month on record. Phoenix, did you know your average high temperature in August was 110.7 degrees? It was the second hottest month on record.
Yes, yes, we did.
Right? Yeah, we noticed some things in Flagstaff too. Most 90-degree nights, the most 110-degree days, and more excessive heat warnings than have been issued for decades. Tucson also, the hottest summer on record, hottest July, hottest August, hottest month on record, second hottest month on record, and the most 100-degree days, which I understand Phoenix just broke as well, their most 100-degree days for the year. Flagstaff had the hottest August and the driest monsoon on record. And additional records fell across the state in September. So we weren't done yet. And it isn't just Arizona either. 20 cities across the country broke heat records for the summer this year. So this is a map showing temperature anomalies for the Southwest during this past summer. So a temperature anomaly is a departure from the long-term average temperature. And the pink and red colors dominating the map indicate that the region was somewhat hotter to much hotter than the long-term average. Now what's happening though, and what I wanted you to pick up from this slide, is this shift that the scientists are seeing. These anomalies are becoming the new normal. So in other words, for long, they will not be the anomaly. And so the long-term average temperature is increasing. And the implications of this increase in the long-term average temperature are serious. Here's just one concern: heat-associated fatalities. So this graph from the National Weather Service shows weather fatalities for a range of weather events, including flood, lightning, tornadoes, hurricanes, heat, winter, cold, wind, and rip currents. The red bar for each shows the number of fatalities last year, 2019. The blue bar shows the 10-year average, and the yellow bar shows the 30-year average. So heat is that set of bars right in the middle of the graph. And we can clearly see that over time, heat is the top cause of weather fatalities in this country. As heat increases, heat-associated fatalities then are likely to increase also. This year so far, there have been 134 verified heat-associated deaths in Maricopa County and 212 deaths, which are still under investigation as to whether heat was a contributing cause of death. Last year, there were 197 heat-associated deaths. So we have pretty clear evidence that the climate is changing. The next questions then are, why is the climate changing, and what does carbon have to do with it? Some of you may know this, so bear with me, because not everybody knows kind of the train of thought as to what we were talking about when we talk about carbon emissions and why they're important. So carbon dioxide is a key factor in keeping our planet habitable. It plays a significant role in keeping the Earth in a natural equilibrium when it comes to temperature. However, we get most of our energy in the world today from burning coal, oil, and natural gas, which are fossil fuels, decomposed and fossilized plants locked away in the Earth for millennia. Burning these fossil fuels releases the carbon and emits carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We're adding more carbon dioxide every year. In fact, we're adding so much that the natural processes that absorb carbon back into the environment, such as living plants that take in carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, can't keep up with what we're emitting. So let's take a look at this fun little video from NASA that gives a pretty great and simple explanation of the issue.
The Earth's atmosphere is a mixture of gases. Some are known as greenhouse gases. That's because they trap heat from the sun and warm the Earth. That's good, because without greenhouse gases, our planet would freeze, and life as most of us know it would be impossible. These greenhouse gases, mainly water vapor and carbon dioxide, naturally cycle between the land and atmosphere and ocean. And over the ages, these greenhouse gases have reached a delicate balance that results in temperatures that we like a lot. It's been that way for thousands of years, until the last 150 years. That's when people began burning fossil fuels. Those fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas, contain carbon that's been locked away from the natural cycle for eons. But when we burn them, that carbon joins with oxygen to make carbon dioxide that goes into the atmosphere. It throws the natural balance out of whack. The more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the more heat that is trapped, and the warmer it gets. And the warmer it gets, the more the climate changes, and the higher the ocean will rise. The more we learn about carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, the better we can deal with the changes caused by global warming, because good planets are hard to find.
Okay, so you can see how the underlying problem causing the climate to change is a carbon dioxide imbalance. We need to fix that imbalance because we need a stable climate. Catherine Hayhoe, an eminent climate scientist and an evangelical Christian, puts it this way: our carbon emissions have to eventually go to zero. We have to. Otherwise, we're never going to have a stable climate, and that's what our goal is for human civilization to thrive. A stable climate. We don't want one that's hotter. We don't want one that's colder. We want one that's stable. So we all got a chance before the break to explore promising avenues for action in order to meet the challenge of a warming planet. And sounds like you all had some great discussions and came up with some great common values that can direct our action. You know, it's not easy to figure out how to move forward in the face of what we know about our climate imbalance and its impacts. But I think that perhaps we can agree that inaction just isn't an option. The question for all of us gathered here today is, as a community of faith, how do we respond? Our presiding bishop reminds us that indeed we must respond. The work of saving this creation, on one level, it is saving our own lives. And on another level, it is saving the world that God has made and God has created. And we dare not deface what God has made. So we're called to respond. Jesus commanded us to love our neighbor, and when we reflect on what that means in the context of saving this creation, we know that means loving what God has created and loving each other, don't we? Our inattention or indifference to God's creation has had great consequences. The climate imbalance we're experiencing is now affecting virtually all life on Earth. Habitats are shifting and disappearing. Unusual heat and droughts are stressing plants and animals. Animals' life cycles are becoming out of sync with plant growth and seasonal changes. Oceans are warming and acidifying, and currents are shifting. Arctic permafrost is melting and sea ice is disappearing. And intense storms, like we've been seeing in the past couple of years, are destroying nesting trees, drowning animals, spreading invasive species, and damaging aquatic ecosystems. So how do we respond in ways that manifest a love for what God has created? But our indifference to God's creation has great consequences for humankind as well. And those who are least responsible for the changes to our climate are the first and hardest hit by it. Estimates in recent years have indicated that the number of climate refugees in the world stands at about 40 million. That number is expected to more than triple in the next 30 years. Food resources are in danger. For every 1 degree Celsius increase in global average temperature, there's an estimated 10% reduction in the world's grain crops. And according to the World Bank, climate-related disasters push 26 million people into poverty every year. How do we respond in ways that manifest a love for each other? As followers of Christ, we're called to respond with acts of love and hope. So we hear a lot about acts of love, but what is an act of hope? Catherine Hayhoe, the climate scientist I quoted a few minutes ago, says this: "What we need is rational hope. Rational in that we understand the magnitude of the problem that we have, but hope in that we are motivated by the vision of a better future." But I also like what authors Joanne Macy and Chris Johnstone have to add to our understanding. They talk about what they call active hope. Active hope, they say, is about becoming active participants in bringing about what we hope for. So when we put these two concepts together, I think we can get a sense of the acts of hope that we're called to. We see this idea of acts of love and hope reflected in things like the Episcopal Creation Care Pledge, where we pledge to protect and renew the earth and all who call it home, in order to grow into a more loving, liberating, and life-giving relationship with the whole of God's creation. As part of a commitment to a life-giving connection to our island home, we pledge to change our habits and choices to live more simply, humbly, and gently on the earth. The acts of love and hope. Acts like using the Sustain Island Home carbon tracker. So if you think back to the three options we explored earlier in our breakout sessions, you might recall that option 1 was about sharply reducing carbon emissions, tackling climate change at its source. Using the Sustain Island Home carbon tracker to track your carbon footprint and take actions to reduce your carbon emissions falls into this category. It's one of many acts of love and hope that we can choose to take. So let's start to explore the Sustain Island Home carbon tracker. What is it? Very simply, it's a web-based tool developed by the Diocese of California that helps you understand how your current household choices are affecting carbon dioxide emissions and supports you in making choices that are more sustainable and economic. In other words, to undertake acts of love and hope. But there are so many industries and cars and trucks and other things out there that burn fossil fuel. How can this carbon tracker make a difference? How can just a few of us at home even make a dent in this climate imbalance problem? Well, that's a good question. But together we can make more of a difference than we might think we can. The fact is that 5 basic activities make up 40% of greenhouse gas emissions in the US. Those 5 activities are electricity, home heating, ground-based transportation, air travel, and food and waste. And the good news is that we now have options for all these activities, activities that just about all individual households participate in, options that are both accessible and affordable. So our choices can make a significant difference. And when I say our choices, I'm talking about a lot of people. This carbon tracker is designed for and available to the entire Episcopal Church and even communities beyond the church. But even if we're talking just about the Episcopal Church, we're talking about 85 million people in 39 provinces and 14 countries around the world. That's a lot of collective power to be tapped. If every Episcopal household signed on to the tracker and reduced their emissions by just 10%, sound familiar, 10%, we'd wipe out as much carbon dioxide emissions as the entire annual production of Uganda or the annual global output of the Coca-Cola Corporation. And this collective power leads to a lot of advocacy power. Our voices for a more stable and healthier planet being heard in national and global policy circles. So you see, together, even small actions on the part of households like yours and mine can make a big difference. Okay, so how does the carbon tracker work? There are 4 basic steps. It measures your carbon footprint, which is the amount of carbon dioxide produced and released in the atmosphere to directly and indirectly support your household's lifestyle and activities. It gives you individual actions to take to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. It aggregates impacts church-wide so that you and others can see and use that collective power. And it helps advocate for climate protection. Okay, but on a practical level, how does it work? How do I use it? It's actually quite simple. So first you get on your computer, tablet, or phone and go to sustainislandhome.org. Take a look at the information on the home page and then create an account. You'll then be directed to answer a set of questions to complete what's called your energy profile. Your answers will allow the platform to calculate your household's carbon footprint, which gives your starting impact. Then you'll go to the actions page and browse more than 70 actions that can help reduce your impact. When you've looked them over, you can decide which ones you want to take. Then you go back to living your life and take steps to complete the actions you've chosen. Periodically, you go back to the sustainislandhome.org website and mark complete the actions you've done. And you browse the actions again to choose new actions you want to take and go back in the world to work on them. So it's pretty simple and straightforward. Now, since a picture is worth 1,000 words, let's actually take a look at the carbon tracker.
Okay, here we go. Let's see how this carbon tracker works. So here we are. You've gotten to sustainislandhome.org, the portal for the carbon tracker. By the way, the carbon tracker is not just for the Episcopal Church. It's for the whole community. And Sustain Island Home is the portal, though, that the Episcopal Church uses. So here's the home page. And you might want to take some time to take a look at the information on this homepage before you get started. There's things like a letter from the presiding bishop that you might want to read. There's an opportunity to select our own diocese so you can follow progress as we go along through the carbon tracker for Arizona. Let's do that here. We'll select Arizona. And that will give you also a welcome letter from Bishop Redall. So you might want to take a look at that and some of the other information on this page, including how the site works, some of the progress from the Episcopal Church, and then you've got this cool thing where you can take a look at what's happening within the churches of the Arizona Diocese, or you can click over on View All Dioceses and see what's happening in all the dioceses of the Episcopal Church. So this is also where you get started. So at the top of the page and at the bottom of the page, there's a Get Started button. So if you're ready to go, click that button and you will be taken to a place where you can create an account and then fill out the information there. And when you've got your account set up, it will then take you to this page where you complete your energy profile. So remember that your energy profile allows the platform to calculate your household's carbon footprint. That will give you your starting impact. So you take about maybe 10 or 15 minutes to answer some questions here about these 6 categories. So your household is the first set of questions you'll answer. Questions about your appliances, then questions about heating and cooling, utility information, your energy use, you'll add that, and then questions about your transportation, and finally a few questions on food and waste. So once you've completed your energy profile, the site will take you to your dashboard. Okay, this is kind of your central place for all your information as you use the carbon tracker. And it's got a couple of different sections here. I'm going to start at the bottom because this is going to be what your energy profile gives you. This is your carbon footprint, your starting impact. This is down at the bottom of your dashboard. So it's broken down your impact, your starting impact by electricity, by cars and trucks, by food and waste, air travel, and heating fuels. And these numbers here are your carbon dioxide emissions measured in metric tons. So this is your starting point. This is what you're going to be trying to reduce. So if you go back up a little bit in your dashboard, you will see a section on your actions. And so this is going to be where you track what's going on with your actions. We'll get back to this in a little bit, but after we've looked at actions that you can take, which you can get to by adding actions, we're going over on this left menu bar to the star with actions. We'll do that in a minute, but let's go up right now to the top of your dashboard where you can see your progress. And this is actually Doug's and my progress, our dashboard. So, and this is where you can kind of get the big picture of how you're doing, okay? So let's go to the actions because they're kind of the heart of this carbon tracker. I've got that page open, so we'll go directly to it. And so this page gives you everything about actions to take. So you can, remember I told you there's over 70 actions that you can take to help reduce your impact. So this is where you want to take a look at these, take some time with this, figure out what is interesting to you. They're broken down here by categories. So you can look by categories, or you can take a look by recommended actions based on your energy profile. This allows you to kind of sort and look at them a little bit according to how you want to come at this. And everybody's going to do this differently. I'm going to take a look at it by categories right now because it's a little easier. But if you look at these different categories, you can see, for example, in Energy Smart, we've got 22 actions you can take. Take a look at these. You can get some more information on each of them. They'll run you through what steps you have to do to take to complete the action. And then you can decide, is this something that I want to do? Is this something that make a big impact? Is it going to save me money? Is it going to cost not too much up front? Is it something doable for me? Or is it something that's going to challenge me? That's what you have to decide. And this is then your next step in the carbon tracker is to figure out which of these actions that you want to take. And when you figure that out, you choose those actions and they will show up back here on your dashboard, down here in the My Actions section. And you can see then what all the total impact will be if you take all these actions, and then you'll be able to see your actions and track your progress on them here on your dashboard. We've got 14 actions, and as you can see, maybe here they're different difficulty, different amount of points, different amount of savings. Some of them we've completed some of the steps, some of them we haven't. You can set a goal for when you want to do it. And then here, if you know you've finished all the steps, you can mark it complete. So this is kind of your actions central point on your dashboard. So as you decide on actions and you go through the steps, you can mark them complete. You can finish each of the actions. And as you complete actions, you'll want to go back to that action section and decide to take some new ones. Maybe you've done some of the energy efficiency work and energy audit perhaps, and then you know what you want to do. You want to take some more actions. You want to actually do some things that will actually reduce your energy use. So you might want to go back at some point and choose new actions and take those. So this is kind of an ongoing process. It's fairly simple to get started. It's something that you want to kind of continuously come back and check and see how you're doing and move forward into some new actions, because the more actions you do, the more carbon emissions, carbon dioxide emissions you will reduce, and the more benefit that you'll have for God's creation. So just want to point out one other thing. If you want to really get into this and learn some more, there's a website that the Diocese of California has about the carbon tracker. They're the ones that actually developed the carbon tracker for the Episcopal Church, Sustain Island Home. And you can find these resources on the site diocal.org/climate. And this page has a section on resources, and this will give you a lot of good tools for learning more about the carbon tracker. We here in the diocese will be working on a program that actually will help all of the churches that want to use the carbon tracker to get up to speed on this and have some expertise on using the carbon tracker so that each church has the ability to help its own parishioners to do this. So this is a step. If you're doing this on an individual level, you can look here at diocal.org/climate for more information. But as we get the program up and rolling in the Diocese of Arizona, then we will have resources within our own diocese to help you out. So that's basically the carbon tracker. You've got the basics now. You can see how it works. And we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about how we're going to roll this out in Arizona.
Okay, so now since actions are really the heart of the carbon tracker, I want to give you a sense of the kind of actions we're talking about. And because we're all going to engage the carbon tracker differently, I'd like to show you some actions that are easy, some that are a little more involved, and some that might be pretty challenging but have a big impact. So here are some of the easy actions. You can reduce driving by combining trips as you go out to do your shopping or whatever, or shopping locally. That will help. You can replace incandescent light bulbs with LEDs, those of you that haven't already done that. You can turn your thermostat down in winter, or probably for most of us, we'll be talking about turning it up in the summer, since we're in Arizona. You can choose green electricity from your electric utility provider, and all the major utility providers in Arizona have green electricity as an option for you. So go find out if you want to do that. You can purchase carbon offsets for air travel. You can eat lower down the carbon food chain, which mainly means eating less beef and lamb. So a little bit more of perhaps other meats, or just go vegetarian a bit. You can take shorter showers. This is Arizona, let's conserve water. And you can turn lights and electronics off when not in use. It's amazing how much energy we consume by leaving some of those things on when we're not using them. Here are some actions that might take a little more time, effort, or upfront cost, but also might have a little more impact. So think about installing an electric heat pump water heater. If your water heater is about at the end of its life, look into it. Or carpool or ride the bus. For those of you that still have lawns, replace those with native or drought-tolerant plants, or just hardscaping is fine. You can get a home energy audit. I recommend that for everyone. It's a wonderful thing to see where you're wasting some of your energy. And home energy audits frequently end up saving you money. You can upgrade to some more energy efficient appliances like your refrigerator, your dishwasher, your oven and stove. Try composting. It's not that hard to do. Or buy or lease a hybrid vehicle. Some of us have already done that. And here are actions that might be more significant projects or more significant investments, but that have a much bigger impact. Some of you might have already installed solar panels. If you haven't and you have the means to do that, it's be a great thing to do. Upgrade to a high efficiency air conditioner. That'd be a great way to save some carbon emissions. Buy or lease an electric vehicle. They're getting more and more practical. Weatherize and insulate your attic. Install a solar hot water system. Or install a gray water system to reuse your gently used water from your home to water your garden or to flush your toilet. So you can choose what actions work for you and then keep choosing new ones as you work with the tracker. So as part of the Creation Care Ministry, the Diocese of Arizona is committing to join other dioceses in the Episcopal Church in using the Sustain Island Home carbon tracker. We're developing a new program to bring the carbon tracker to the congregations. So this is an opportunity for you to take actions in your own household and together as a church community with training and support by the diocese. Now your participation is voluntary. I'm going to stress that, it's voluntary, but we want you to know that we're planning to support you along the way. Our goal is to have some level of participation by all the churches in the diocese. And some of you might find this program interesting or exciting, motivating, maybe even fun. For some of you, it may not be a priority. We understand that, but we hope there are at least a couple of households in each church community that sign on to use it. Now, we're still in the beginning stages of putting the program together, so we'll be rolling it out over the remainder of this fall and into the winter months, so be patient with us. Basically, here's how we're planning to have the Carbon Tracker program work here in the diocese. So a diocesan core team is being formed and will be trained to promote the use of the Carbon Tracker and to assist churches with using it. Next, we'll identify what we call church climate champions. This is a person in each church. It could be the rector or a deacon, or it could be a parishioner who takes the lead in introducing the Carbon Tracker to the congregation and champions its use. Church climate champions will then be trained to help lead the program in their church. Then the next step for each church is to form a Carbon Tracker leadership team. This team would include the church climate champion, the rector and vestry, 1 or 2 people committed to coordinating activities around the tracker program and acting as the liaison to the diocesan team, and then perhaps a few parishioners who have some experience using the tracker who can help others with it. You may have to add those people along the way as more and more people start using it. And members of this leadership team will be trained by members of the diocesan core team. And then with help from the members of the diocesan core team, each leadership team will introduce and launch the Carbon Tracker program in their church and encourage participation and progress from the congregation on an ongoing basis. So again, the participation in this program will be voluntary, but we hope that many of you will plant a few seeds in your congregation and see if you can grow some interest in engaging with the Carbon Tracker. The way we make a difference and counteract the changing climate we're experiencing is by working together. We heard Dr. Shade talk about that, working together. And the Carbon Tracker program is designed to work in community. We know that changing habits isn't easy, but it's easier when we help and support each other. We know that we're stronger together than we are on our own. We're reminded that we are all part of the body of Christ. And as Paul tells us, there are a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone. The beauty of working in community is that we don't need to all take the same actions individually, but together we can cover them all. And so we know that together as a community, we can do more than we think we can do. Now, I'm sure some of you may still be thinking, but can we really make a difference with this? I believe that the resounding answer is yes, we can. We know that in Christ, all things are possible. I like to look to the example of the early church to see how a small group of people with love, hope, faith, and vision left their old ways behind and changed the world by the example they set. We can make a difference when we choose to operate out of love for God's creation and love for each other. We can make a difference when we choose to operate out of rational, active hope. Rational in that we understand the magnitude of the problem. Hope in that we are motivated by the vision of a better future. And active in that we become active participants in bringing about what we hope for. The future of our fragile, beautiful planet home is in our hands, Archbishop Desmond Tutu reminds us. As God's family, we are stewards of God's creation. We can be wantonly irresponsible, or we can be caring and compassionate. God says, I have set before you life and death. Choose life. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. My email address is pam@azdiocese.org. My phone number is 602-325-3306. The diocesan website has a page now devoted to the Creation Care Ministry, which you can access directly by going to creation.azdiocese.org. And it has a lot of resources on creation care, which you might find helpful. And I'm adding more resources all the time. So check there if you have a question, or just email me or call me directly. There's also a Facebook group called Arizona Episcopalians Caring for Creation, which is a forum for sharing ways that we respond to our call as Arizona Episcopalians to love and take care of the world God created. I invite you to join us in that group. So that's all I've got. Thank you all. If there's time for questions, I can take some questions.
We have 5 minutes, so probably time for like one question if someone wants to raise their hand quickly. Seeing no questions, but the way you need to ask your questions actually is by reaching out to Pam after convention. We don't have to answer all of the questions right now. Thank you so much, Canon Pam. I appreciate. Now, she has put incredible effort not just into this particular presentation, obviously, but also into this entire diocesan convention. And so I am so grateful to her for all the work she has done this whole year, her first year as the Canon for Care of Creation. So thank you, Pam. We will look forward to learning more about the carbon tracker and putting our own information in. The bishop's house just got a new refrigerator. I was feeling like, oh, I should have filled out the carbon tracker before we got the new refrigerator. So I could have made effort right there. Oh, well, missed opportunity.
I haven't done it already, so
yeah.
Don't worry.
Anyway, in closing, a couple things. So we are at the end of the first day of convention. Thank you and congratulations. We made it. There were moments at which I didn't think we were going to, but we did, which is great. Last night, we had a Eucharist that was being live streamed to YouTube, and the upload speed somehow got interfered with, and so it uploaded to YouTube about half of the service, but it wasn't the first half or the second half. It was about 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off. We do, however, though, have an actual full recording of last night's Eucharist. And now that we are finished with today, we are going to be downloading it off of PSAV's server and putting it up on the YouTube channel in place of the recording that is there right now. So I encourage you tonight or tomorrow afternoon to tune in and experience worship. There are some amazing musical offerings from all around the diocese. There are readers from all around the diocese. There's a sermon that ties in really well with everything that we're talking about today and tomorrow. And I encourage you to look that up if you were not able to experience it live last night. We apologize for technological difficulties, but that's the world we're in right now. We are now shifting so that those of you who wish to stay on the Zoom, that will be social hour, right? Or is there a new link? Just stay on? So just stay on. If you want to go hang out with your friends and chit chat, you can unmute everybody. It's going to be a complete and utter free for all. If you want to do evening prayer, you need to log off of this Zoom, and there is a link in Chime for evening prayer, which will be starting right now, led by, I think, Brother Dave or Prior Chad Sundin, one of our religious. And then tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m., we'll have sort of a coffee hour and a morning prayer service. The two links for that are in your Chime app. And the business meeting of convention starts at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. So I will see you all tomorrow. God bless you all, and have a wonderful, peaceful evening. God bless you.